All right, well, welcome. This is a session that I put together to a large extent because I have agents that are going through some of the EXP training program, and there's a section about Google business pages and getting them set up, and people were struggling. And at first I was confused, which is a normal state, but anyhow, I was confused because I've set up more than 15 Google business pages in the past. Never had any trouble, right? And so what I've learned is that the rules have changed dramatically. And that what I wanted to cover was exactly what do you need to do in order to create a Google business page. In order to come up, when somebody types in best real estate agent in Morgan Hill, how do I optimize my local presence in such a way that I show up? And when they have maps and things like that, how do I do that? And that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to talk about what some of the challenges are. And believe me, there are some challenges, right? And so, sort of as a starting question about Google business pages and optimization is, how bad do you want to do this? I mean, how bad? Because if you're not really motivated, it's not as easy as it used to be. It used to be that it was really easy to fool Google to rank. When I set up about 15 business pages just based on local real estate companies that I had a peripheral relationship with, but it had my name, but it had their address, but I put in a letter at the end of the address like it was, 1482B or something like that. And Google would just take it and it would create a business page for me for that address. And by the way, when I stopped working with those brokers, they were unhappy that I showed up in local searches. You get the idea. It was easy. It was like, real estate agents throwing their business card into, like an aquarium bowl or something like that. That's all you really had to do. You'd upload your picture, you'd put in some words, and you're off and going. That doesn't exist anymore. And in fact, because Google is ramping it up, and I guess I should admit I was part of the problem, right? Because I wasn't the only one creating multiple pages and getting them ranked. I just yesterday got a lead from one of those many business pages if somebody wants to give the real estate license because I had posted stuff, right? It's still trickling in, even though I'm not posting on them anymore. I'm not doing anything. See, that's what we all wanted, right? Easy. We create all these pages, people see them, they reach out to us, we have a client, didn't have to pay anything, easy peasy, right? Well, that's changed. And one of the nightmares that could happen, and in fact, it made me think about my page, is that you could wake up on, Tuesday and find out that Google has, well, slapped down your Google business page because they are going to want proof of existence, right? And you might be saying, "Why? How could? What do you mean proof of existence? I got reviews. I post stuff every once in a while. I got pictures." But the rules are changing, and Google is getting much more aggressive at regulating, policing. Let's just say, all right. And so there is a handout. I know that most of you come are looking for a handout. So, I got a handout. Most of the information from which this material was based came from a really good friend of mine called Google Gemini. I figured that Google would have a relatively good idea of how Google works. I've verified it with many other sources. And some of the things that I'm going to point out, which are necessary, it would be okay for you if you've seen my Google business page, to say, well, wait a second, you're telling us to do this or not do that, but you're not following that rule. I'll give you an example, an easy example. My Google business page has my name of my team, and it has my DRE number in the profile title. Right. Now, let's say you've created a Google business page and your title is best real estate agent in fill in the blanks, let's say Morgan Hill. And then, because you want to comply with the California Department of Real Estate regulations that require that you disclose your DRE number, you put in, like I did, a hyphen and the DRE number. You have just eliminated virtually any chance that Google is going to approve that page. First of all, because what Google is going to do is they're going to go to the California Department of Real Estate and look how you're listed at the Department of Real Estate. Does it have your first name, middle name, last name? And if your profile title does not match what the Department of Real Estate says your name is, then Google says, hey, I don't know what you're trying to pull on me, but you're not the same person. They don't want the DRE number, because in the Department of Real Estate, on your public profile, there is your DRE number, but it's not part of your name. It's not part of your name. So if you don't want your DRE number in the title, you want to put it in the description. The title has to match. And by the way, whatever that title is, which is usually your first, maybe middle and last name, it has to match everywhere that you're setting up pages and looking for reviews, because Google is looking for consistency. How do I get away with it? I'm an OG when it comes to Google business pages. And so mine was all set up and operating before Google hired new bouncers to stand at the door and beat people up trying to get in. Right. So you don't, just because somebody is doing it doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it. Isn't that nice to know? Right. So we're going to talk more about that. Why not? All right. So the old way, you would have, we oftentimes call them hub pages. So you have a page that you want people to go to. It's the money page. Right, it's the page where they would fill out information, sign up for something, buy something if you were into that, and then you'd create that would be the hub, a bunch of other pages that pointed to it. And by doing that, you could manipulate Google's algorithm. There's probably, the video is still on my YouTube channel, but it's, let's just say, older, where I was talking about this in the class, and I had a blog, which I'm going to explain why that might be useful. I had a blog, and just to show people, because I was showing off and bragging, I created a hub environment, all linking to that page, to that landing page. And by the next day or so, that page ranked on the first page of Google searches for that area for real estate, first page. And within 3 more days, Google had banned my website, because at that point they had figured out what I had done, right? And that all I was doing was manipulating the algorithm, and you don't want Google mad at you. Let me just say, I was never able to recover that web page from Google. So you understand that doesn't work anymore. We would stuff keywords, right? You would sometimes even stuff the keywords in the background in a font that Google couldn't see, right, when they crawled it. But in other words, if you looked at the website, I said it the other way around. If you looked at the website, viewer couldn't see the words, but Google could, because its little robot a spider would crawl the page and see the keywords, and none of that works anymore. right? The old search engine optimization systems that this doesn't work anymore. Um, so we used to have high traffic, low trust. Anyhow, the new way, artificial intelligence. So the decision that's going to be made as to whether or not your Google business page is going to be allowed by Google, this is just a big part of what we're going to talk about today, but not everything, is going to be determined by a visual artificial intelligence program that Google has. A human is not going to make the decision. And that's why when you're trying to verify your Google business page, you get an answer very quickly. Very quickly. By the way, don't go and start a Google business page right now until you've heard the whole class and thought about it. Because if you create a Google business page and you screw up something so that Google won't verify it, and you click on the button that says you want to appeal it, you have 60 minutes to upload a package of proof to them, which you better have ready. Because if you have to go collect all that stuff, you may not have time to upload it in 60 minutes. And if they don't get it and change their mind in 60 minutes, they just say, okay, well, forget it, you're done. The only way that you would be able to do this again is to start again, but maybe change, you have to change stuff, right? You'd have to start all over, but you're basically, you're out. And so it's going to be done by artificial intelligence. And you'll notice that that's the review part. You also have probably noticed that when you go into Google and you type in what's happening to the real estate market in Morgan Hill, Google is going to give you a summary from what Gemini has learned. Now, what you want to be, and we're going to talk about ranking, is that you can get ranked. So at the bottom, it might say source Michael Devlin, right? Or your name would be the one, obviously, you want. And so people aren't doing searches and clicking on links like they used to. They're doing searches and getting the answers right away. So the decisions about whether or not you're going to have a page is done by AI, and we want to optimize. And I'll show you some examples, right? Google is the answer. Google used to be the source of answers. It's not the source so much anymore. It is the answers. Agents have to become the source. Now, what that means is that you have to be, let's say, I'm in Morgan Hill. There are different communities in Morgan Hill. There's different subdivisions in Morgan Hill. There's an area called Borrello Ranch. Well, let's say I want to get Google, when somebody types in what's the best real estate agent in Borrello Ranch, I want to come up. Well, I need to have a web page, a blog, or something where I'm putting in information about what's happening in Borrello Ranch. Best places to eat in Borrello Ranch, real estate market in Borrello Ranch, fixer up, everything I can think of about what's going on in Borrello Ranch, I want to have on a website that's got my name on it that would match my Google business profile. Because when Google is checking, when they're deciding whether or not they're going to send a lead to me in Borrello Ranch, they're looking to see, do I demonstrate any knowledge of that particular neighborhood? Are you starting to understand why I started with the question, how bad do you want to do this? Right? How bad do you want to do this? Because I'm talking about work, right? And we're not done. 65% of Google searches end without a single click. Like if I'm meeting an agent and they're out in the Tules, because I have agents on my team all over the state of California, I simply type in what is the real estate market update, and I type in the name of whatever city, and I know how many days on market, whether or not it's a buyer or seller's market, what is the median and average price, all of that just comes up. So if people are chatting, Angela or I don't know if Erica is here, if you see something that looks like I should talk about it, let me know. Otherwise, I'll look at it at the end.
You got it.
All right. Otherwise, I just keep going. So not SEO, GEO. And what we're talking about is proximity, relevance, and prominence, right? These are the three pillars that determine whether or not you're going to show up in a Google map search. Right? This is what's going to determine it. Isn't that what we want? Somebody says best real estate agents are now, and there's a map. Now you'll see if you do this, first of all, there's paid ads across the top. There is a way, by the way, to show up for sure in Google searches. You need a credit card and sign up, and Google put ads across the top. Even the ads next to the map, the first one is usually sponsored. You can always rank if you pay Google. But what we're looking for is organic, which means we didn't pay anything, rankings. So I talk about this now. Addresses. All right. Addresses. Now we're going to spend a little bit more time on this. But what if you're using a map? Google wants to know your address of your business. Now here's the issue. Can you put on a Google business page your home address? Can you do that? If you're at EXP, you're only going to be able to do that for a short period of time, because EXP will regularly check real estate agents' sites and pages, and the California Department of Real Estate has a rule. And the rule is that you cannot publish an address that's not an official branch office or corporate office of your broker. And so what will happen is that if you have a local office, like I have a local office, right? I'm not talking about my home address. I can't use it either because it's not an official branch office with EXP. So you can't use offices that aren't branch offices as an address. You can't use your home address. So what do you do? Now, how about a workspace, like one of those like Regus or WeWork or one of those? I could get like a workstation. Your chances of getting that approved by Google are slim. Google approves only 15% of Google business page requests when the address is a shared workspace. How does Google know? They're not stupid. They have computers. So when you give it that Regus or WeWork or whatever Pacific Workspaces, you give it that address, Google immediately knows that this is a workspace address. And unless your name is on the marquee sign out front, they're not going to, no, not good enough. Now, if you rent a real office and you've got what looks like a permanent sign, then they're more likely. But you understand, just using a WeWork address, first of all, it's still not an approved branch office with the Department of Real Estate. You're still going to have the broker yelling at you, and Google doesn't like them because this is what a scammer would do. PO boxes, just forget about it, right? It still doesn't comply with the DRE. So what do? We can't use our home address. I don't want to use EXP's corporate address. I don't want to use it because it's like I'm in Morgan Hill, but it's in San Ramon, you know. I don't want to rank for San Ramon. I want to rank for Morgan Hill, so I don't want to use that. So what do? You can use what's called an SAB, which is a service area business, in which case your home address is not part of your Google business profile. You understand there are many people that have legitimate businesses who work from home. So we can exclude our address from creating a service area business profile. So what does this have to do with proximity? Oh, we still have to tell Google what our home address is. It's not because they're going to publish it, but because they want to verify our reality. And we're going to talk about what that means. That's actually the most fun part. I don't know, maybe should I do that now? I don't know. I don't want to leave this out. So I'll talk about that a little bit now. And I've got printed information on how to do this. So when I was setting up all those business profiles, the way I did it was by a postcard. And you could then tell Google, send me a postcard to this address. These were other brokers that I was working at, and I knew I'd be going there more than, a week or two. So I'd show up at the office and the receptionist would say, hey, you got a postcard, you got a letter from Google. And I'd say, great, they give it to me. I open it up, there's a code number. I put in the code number. I got me another business profile. Easy. They will not allow real estate. You can't do that. Right? Real estate agents in particular are not allowed to create a Google business profile using the postcard system. Otherwise, it'd be really easy. They mail a postcard to your house, you open it up, there it is. You put in the code, it doesn't work. So what Google requires is a video. Now, the video is to prove that you are really at that location and that you're using it for business. Now, Google has some rules about your video. Rule number one, it must be one continuous video. No stopping, no splicing, one start to finish uninterrupted video. And if you are going in and out and you see that there's goes from light to shade and things like that, because an AI program is what's watching your video, they'll decide maybe that was a cut. And if they believe that you made a cut, then they immediately reject your video. They want you to start outside so that you could take a video that would show your address. You might turn your camera around, and if you can see a street sign or a landmark, in Morgan Hill, there's a hill, not Morgan's Hill, but it's called El Toro. You have to see the hill to understand why. And if you turn around and that's in the background and people can, the AI can see the hill, they are smart enough to know that you're in Morgan Hill. You see there, it says Monterey Road, they see that, whatever. And then they want you to prove that you have access. So let's say you have a car and you have purchased those classy magnetic